Hello world, welcome back to Razor RC. Finally got a chance to drive my brand new 2021 Xray XB4 Carpet Edition at the track. Now my local county and state of California actually is going into sort of a lockdown slash shelter in place type rule, so I did not have a chance actually to paint a body for it. I ran this buggy. I actually ran my Schumacher Cat L1 Evo body. It fits perfectly pretty much, so I just ran that temporarily until I could get my body painted, but I needed to get some runs in before with the track closed, so it was important to get out there. Now I picked up my buggy from eurorc.com. I got a 5% off coupon code, so check that out in the description. Definitely worth checking them out if you're interested in the Xray XB4. Now this buggy was pretty dang awesome, so I spent the days, probably about 5 or 6 battery packs, trying different tire combinations, small setup changes and stuff like that. Pretty much ran the kit setup, and then I'll talk about the changes I made to get to drive a little bit better. In terms of the parts, I've been running Hobbywing XR10 stock spec V4 ESC, Team Powers V3.1 Actinium motor, Sanwa 1258TG, and this ARX 482 clone of a Sanwa receiver, and then a Ace Redline battery. And then tire-wise, I found that the Cactus Fusions up front worked the best in yellow compound, and the Cactus in the rear Schumacher yellow compound again as well. Something I was thinking about is that it seems like the European cars, both this and the Schumacher, run best on Schumacher tires. So Schumacher obviously makes a lot of carpet tires. I think they're like the spec tire for EOS. Whereas if you look at US brands like the TLR or the Associated, most of the testing and tuning are done by guys that are sponsored by US tire companies. So they're generally running like J-Concepts Nessie tires, or maybe Proline Prism tires, something like that. So I do find that the European cars do seem to drive better on the Schumacher tire, so definitely worth getting to if you currently run some other brand. Definitely try Schumacher tires. I think that's well worth it. Now, my initial thoughts on how it actually drove. So first off, a very fluid vehicle. Now, this obviously is a little bit more pricey than most four-wheel drive buggies out there, but for whatever reason, this thing, it just flows really nicely. Maybe it's the parts quality, the fitment, whatever, but I've never driven like a pro's car, but I kind of imagine that that's how it feels. Like everything is just so fluid and smooth and working nicely. You don't really get weird little hiccups and stuff like that. So very fluid vehicle is kind of the best way I can describe it. I think that's a lot to do with the quality of the vehicle, the quality of the parts, the fitment of the plastics, everything. Just, there's no binding or any excess friction or whatever being applied. So just a very fluid vehicle. Tons of steering. I did find that I did need to tone down the steering a little bit. Actually running -2 on the speed. And then the other thing I noticed is that this little drag link here, probably a good idea to try to get that straight across. I did feel like there was some expo being applied, like mechanical expo being applied, so I actually ended up doing like -5% expo right in the middle of the steering, so that seemed to kind of make it a little more linear, so something to consider. I'm running a fairly tall servo. This 1258TG kind of sticks forward a little bit, so I think this drag link is a little more diagonal than optimal. The vehicle feels very, very light, definitely lighter than the B74.1. I have not weighed it, but feels almost as light as the TLR, maybe pretty similar in weight, and very just kind of light on its feet. You just feel like there's not a whole lot of mass behind it. Feels almost like a two-wheel drive vehicle in how light and nimble it feels. And then speed-wise, I think this makes for a really excellent out of the box, like turnkey stock car. If you look at this little buggy, it's super lightweight. It's got the slipper, it's got the oiled bearings, and then it's got the composite gears inside of the disc, front and rear. So overall, this thing, I think acceleration wise is almost as fast as my TLR 22X4, and my TLR actually has ceramic bearings. So I think acceleration wise, sort of drivetrain wise, this is probably as fast as the TLR. If I put ceramic bearings in there, I'm sure it would be just as fast. It's really, really good out of the box. The oil bearings are not quite as smooth as the ceramic stuff, but definitely a lot smoother and less friction, less resistance than, say, a grease-filled bearing. Overall, the shocks and everything feel fairly soft. maybe a little bit closer to like a dirt car. So our local track is like a gray carpet, you know, sort of like an office style type carpet, but it's not super smooth. The surface is actually laid over dirt, so it's got kind of ripples and waves and stuff in the dirt, so it's a little bit more of a bumpy carpet track, which is kind of a funny thing. But yeah, this buggy feels a little bit soft overall. Felt like there was a lot of roll in the corners. The springs feel fairly soft. Maybe the shock oil needs to be bumped up in weight or something like that. So I did end up making a few changes, mostly to try to get a little bit less roll, because it would tend to kind of roll a lot, kind of lift inside wheel, kind of diff out as a result. So overall, yeah, it feels like it's maybe meant to drive on something with less traction, or maybe a little bit smoother surface or something. I'm not really sure, but yeah, overall I felt like the buggy felt very soft overall, and definitely something I was looking to improve the stiffness or the firmness overall. Also under braking, awesome under braking, extremely stable despite being so light and so agile. It actually is very, very stable under braking, and I think that is due to the two-way slipper. So this thing, for whatever reason, it does seem to work really, really nicely. So I just left it at sort of kit setup on the pad. So the way it works is basically it's got a single spring that applies tension to both sides, but the outdrives can slip independently, and basically based off what slipper pads you run, you can get different varying sort of like percentages or balance between the front and rear. So, you know, obviously more grippy slipper plates or pads are going to make it tend to bias that side of the vehicle. But overall, yeah, I think the kit setup for the slipper feels really good. I did loosen it a little bit, and one thing I didn't like is the set screw just kind of seems to be applied directly to the threads of the slipper screw, so you don't want to crank that down or anything. Other vehicles like the Associated River kind of have a flat spot for you put that down, but I don't think this one does. I couldn't find any flat spots on that slipper screw, so I would definitely just kind of lightly tighten that down. You don't need to go too crazy on that. So changes I made were basically to address a couple things. First off, a ton of front end grip. These tires are excellent. I was running about 14 millimeters of ride height front and rear. The rears, it's hard to get much lower than that. Actually end up switching to some Associated spring cups just to get a little bit shorter springs, and then that way get a little bit lower ride height. I'm going to try more like 12, 13 millimeters as well, but was running about 14 millimeters. Tons of steering. Did seem to traction roll a bit on the front end, so I end up actually running zero camber on the front. The manual doesn't tell you what the camber is, but if you look up online, it looks like it's supposed to be -2 degrees of camber. I ran zero to basically just kind of get rid of the front end grip, and that made it a little bit easier to drive and traction roll a little bit less. Also shortened the links on the front anti-roll bar, so you can see I've got, you know, about 2 millimeters of the sway bar kind of sticking out from the rod end right there. Just to, that basically stiffens up the sway bar a little bit, makes it feel a little like it's doing a little more to prevent roll. And then the other things I did were to the shocks. So I ended up staying at the shocks basically one hole up and to the outside. That again kind of stiffens up the shock just a tiny bit. That also helped quite a bit, because it just feels too soft overall, at least for our local track. So I do recommend trying that. I also ordered up some other springs, a 5 dot in the front, a 4 dot in the rear, and we're gonna see how that goes. But next time I get out there, we'll try the stiffer springs. That's pretty much it. The last thing I want to try is actually lowering the rear hub. So both the dirt and the carpet setup basically have the center hole on the rear hubs. I think it'd be probably a good idea to run a little bit lower hub height, and then that way get the arm a little more flat. It tends to kind of like look like this when it's at rest at, you know, sort of 13, 14 millimeters ride height. So dropping it down will help a little bit, but I think you would also have to add probably 1 millimeter of shock extension. So you'd have to remove 1 millimeter off of the limiters inside the shock to make up the difference in droop. So yeah, that's pretty much it. My thoughts on the Xray XB4. I've got some running footage now as well. Basically 3 sessions, one by myself just driving around, another with I think there were a couple of B6.2s running around, so a little bit of a track battle there, and then finally a local fast guy, Anthony, drove it for a few laps just to see how it drove and familiarize himself with the vehicle. He's thinking about picking one up, so shout out to Anthony. Thanks for the video, and yeah, enjoy. Definitely hit the like, share, subscribe button. Look for more videos soon, and check out your RC if you're interested in one of these.
19.3. 21.5. 19.3. 22.7.
Good there.
19.2. 19.2.
13.5. Straight.
You were driving for like 10 minutes, so it probably wouldn't matter. Unless it's really hot, you could have got a thermal cut down.
Yeah, too much there. That's just